This is not a kid-friendly show.
Yo, what's going on, my dudes? Welcome to another RuneScape news coverage video. So today we're going to go over another smithing design document by Mod Jack. Again, anything in here can be subject to change, and if you have any concerns, tweet at JagXJack and give your feedback. So today we're going to be talking about specifically the basic mechanics to smithing that's going to come with the rework. So let's just jump right into it. It says summary. Smithing works largely the same as before the rework. Ore is smelted into bars, which are then made into usable equipment. The major changes are ores and bars can be used directly from the bank. Oh wow. Items take longer to make. Items can be produced at a variety of quality levels, and items of the highest quality can be handed in for XP. Updates. Fine items must now be smithed into presentation items before being handed in. So the basic process is a player starts smithing by clicking on any anvil. It opens up a smithing interface. If we do not have the resources to make a new smithing interface, it will open up the regular Make X window. From here, the player simply chooses the item they want to make from the options available to them. Items will typically take significantly longer to make than they currently do, but otherwise the process is unchanged. The length of time taken to make an item scales with the number of bars that it requires. So the high bar items are no longer faster XP per hour. That's interesting. Ores and bars can be smelted and used directly from the bank. This simplifies inventory management to an extent, but a new mechanic, the Forge, detailed in an upcoming document, will introduce a new system that encourages but doesn't require active gameplay, and that does not depend on the exact distance between the bank and the anvil. The number of bars needed to make each item have been changed to better reflect their value to the player. This is irrelevant when training, but it matters when making expensive high-level items for actual use. The new bar requirements are as follows. So weapons are all 10. Generally, they're going to take 10 bars to make. Two-handers specifically are going to make 20. Helms are 4. Shields are 10. Plate legs and plate skirts are 6. Chain body and plate body are 8, and boots and gauntlets are going to take 2. So nothing's going to take 1 anymore, and everything is going to be upped. So that's really interesting to know. Not only is it going to take a lot more bars to make these items, they're going to take a lot longer to physically actually make them when you're actually smithing. So that's also something to take note. Items like chain bodies, non-full helmets, and so on are legacy items that won't be added to the new 60 plus tiers. Their stats will be fixed so they are exactly as good as the standard item in that slot, and they only really exist as legacy cosmetic options for that slot at low tier, like how plate skirts work. The alternative is removing them entirely, which would turn them into tradable rares. So all the chain skirts from like dragon downward are going to be upped in stats to match the counterparts of the plate bodies, and anything higher like the new necronium upwards will not have any of these variants. So that's also important to note. So upgrading items. A regular bronze sword, rune plate body, and so on are considered a base item in the rework. Base items can be upgraded by doing more smithing work on them. Upgraded items have an item level 1 higher for each time they've been upgraded, but the requirements to use them don't change. For example, a rune sword that has an item level of 47, but a rune sword plus 2 has an item level of 49. You upgrade an item in exactly the same way as creating the item. A recipe accessible through the skilling interface requires the correct materials and outputs the upgraded item. The materials required for an upgraded item are the base item and as many bars as were required to make the base item. For example, an iron sword requires 10 bars to make, and an upgraded iron sword requires 1 iron sword and 10 iron bars to make. At higher tiers, items can be upgraded more than once. The number of times the item can be upgraded is half the tier, rounded down. Each time an item is upgraded, the number of materials required doubles. For example, a rune sword can be upgraded 3 times. Making a base rune sword requires 10 bars. Upgrading the rune sword to a rune sword plus 1 requires 1 rune sword and 10 rune bars. Upgrading a rune sword plus 1 to a rune sword plus 2 requires 1 rune sword plus 1 and 20 rune bars. And upgrading a rune plus 2 to a rune plus 3 requires 1 rune sword plus 2 plus 40 rune bars. In each case, the amount of XP is equal to the bars used, not including the sword. The amount of time taken is the same as it took to create the base item. This means that upgrading items is faster XP per hour than making base items. There is also a final bonus for handing in, see later in the section, which makes upgrading better XP overall. So fine items. An item which has been upgraded to the best upgrade level available for its tier is a fine item. All upgraded items are tradable, but only base items and fine items can be traded on the GE. This keeps the amount of items on the GE down to a manageable level. This is definitely subject to change, but it seems like the best compromise. So handing in. Fine items and only fine items can be handed in to master smiths for extra XP. This provides an immediate sync for the smithed items. Before they can be handed in, fine items must be smithed into presentation items first. This process only requires the fine item and takes about as long as the base item of the same time took to make. The presentation item is untradeable and can then be handed in for XP. The amount of XP given is equivalent to half of the total amount of bars needed to make the fine item. See the later section example XP for actual numbers. 3 NPCs will accept items from the player. Martin Steelweaver in Burthorpe, Sock in the Artisan's Workshop, and Lady Traherne in Prifddinas. Presentation items are untradeable, and therefore the player must do this smithing work themselves. They do not have to have made the fine item used to make the presentation item, and these can be bought from the GE. This creates an internal economy in the smithing skill and allows for fast and slow training methods at appropriate cost. Because handing in presentation items is the fastest XP per hour by far, it will also be the most expensive. This will create a market for fine items which poorer smiths can take advantage of in exchange for slower XP rates. On the assumption that we are not able to effectively rework the Artisan's Workshop at the same time as the main rework, handing in presentation items to any NPC will also reward Artisan Workshop respect points. Now, item tiers and stats. Smithing requirement, the smithing level required to make these items. Combat requirement, the attack or defense level required to wear these items. Upgrades, the number of times these items can be upgraded. Base item level, the item level, combat power of the base item of that tier. Fine item level, the item level, combat power of the fine items in the tier. So you can see here the graph. So you see all the way up until Dragon, we'll be able to create fine items of the same level as the level to smith them. Then when we go beyond that, Necronium, Invictum, and Ethereum, it'll be 5 levels below the level to smith it for the fine items. So at level 90 smithing, you'll be able to create a fine item of level 85, so it's 5 levels below the smith level. Interesting to note. Now example XP. This is an example of materials and XP for crafting a fine Ethereum sword. These numbers have not been properly balanced against live XP rates. They are not final or even very sensible. Just show you a relative progression of XP throughout the upgrade process. So to create 1 bar, it's about 10 seconds with 50 XP. Then when you have 10 bars, creating 1 sword takes about 200 seconds for 1000 XP. Then to upgrade that sword, it's another 200 seconds for an extra 1000 XP. Upgrading once more, you add double the bars, so you end up with double of the XP. Looks like so on and so forth going until you have the fine sword. And then at the very bottom, it says it's going to take a total of 320 bars to make this fine sword. Going to take a total of about 23 minutes and 20 seconds excluding smelting, so assuming you bought the bars, and it's going to give you about 48k smithing, again assuming you bought the bars. So why not work orders? The previous design used work orders for training. In this version of the design, the ability to upgrade and hand in work orders effectively replaces this. The key differences are that the player is making actual items, weapons, and armor rather than abstracted items like protean bars, which will hopefully reinforce the key mechanics of the smithing skill better. If during playtesting we feel that the skill needs more structure, a system analogous to work orders where you have to make and or hand in specific items could be implemented relatively easily to add variety and small goals to work towards. Now, while working on this video, he did quickly add to this and added a feedback section to where he says, lots of people are disappointed with the unrealistic bar quantities for weapons. So he's considering a mechanic where a special form of Ethereum is a rare drop from mining, and this will be needed for making weapons. This adds an extra item to keep track of and complexity to the skill, so he's not entirely convinced it's worth doing. But that wraps it up for the video. If you have any concerns, just tweet at JagXJack and give your feedback to him. Looks pretty interesting. I don't have too much objections for it, to be quite honest. But yeah, we'll see how it unfolds. Anyways, that wraps it up for the video. If you liked it, hit that like button. If you're not subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button. I promise to keep you up to date on all things RuneScape. You are already in the right channel, my dog, so hit that subscribe button. Anyways, thanks for watching. I am out. Peace.
Audio Jungle.